My name's Ralph Hobbs. Welcome to Nanda Hobbs, and today I've got Mitch Ferrie here, who's currently exhibiting Do You See What I See? It's a very exciting show for us. It's one that we've been waiting a few years for, while he's been carving away. And so today we thought it would be a great opportunity just to talk about the nature of carving marble and some of the eccentricities, and also what makes Mitch tick and his inspiration behind the works. So for starters, Mitch, the nature of carving as an artistic expression for you, what's going on when you set about it?
When I start with these, and also just to start with saying that it's one of the most quiet times when I'm working with stone internally. It is everything else that is outside in life, it does not exist. It's such a physical act. You're covered in dust, you've got dust masks and PPE gear on all day.
So it's perfect for this time.
Absolutely. I've been working towards this all of my life, pretty much. That's it. I've spoken with a few friends that are in the same industry with that. We're like, well, we'll be fine. But when carving works, any works, regardless if they're faceted works or organic works, the quietness that you have, even while you're holding a 9-inch grinder, which is quite ironic in itself, is, for me, it's just absolute bliss. And understanding how a stone works, how to open it up, how to show what it can be from a raw block.
So you start with a lump of marble?
Just a lump of marble. Sometimes first of all, you need to sound it out. Find if there's any fissures, cracks, breaks, bruisings. Pick your choice of marble, pick your colour in marble for what you're trying to achieve. Sometimes you get halfway through it and it just doesn't work.
So when you talk about the fissures and the bruises, so they're flaws within the stone that might disintegrate.
And that can come from quarrying the block, from where they blow it out from the cliff. It can come from then carving halfway through, and then all of a sudden you'll see a small crack. And sometimes there's ways of putting this really sort of thin glues that the Italians have, which is beautiful, and you run that through the crack, and you might be able to carve in another 10 centimetres. And as you do that, that crack might vanish, but it holds together while you're doing that, so you might not lose an edge per se. And then other times you might get further in and realise this is not the block that you need to be carving this from, and another work can ensue from that.
And you're carving the predominant way that this exhibition's come together is the abstract form. So there seems to be an ethereal nature to your vision.
That's right, and also picking this stone because of how luminous it is. That's one of the choices in doing this. It's a very hard stone to create this from. Some of the Italian stones hold their edge so much better, but you don't get that glitter like you do through a lot of these works.
So this is an Australian stone?
This is Northern Queensland Champagne Chiligo white marble. They have a range of beautiful marbles up there actually, and this is some of the older stuff that I bought quite a while ago and had carved into the larger work that's down there, and a lot of these fractals have come from that one work. That's why I've also decided to call it the Fractal Series, because fractals are symmetry in nature that are very similar to each other, but then are always just slightly different. And then coming from that larger work and splitting them up even more was something I didn't particularly think I was going to do. I thought I'd recarve the whole work itself, but then after looking at it and cutting it up and starting to see some of these other forms that sort of broke off from it was lovely to do.
So in effect, although it is an abstract form when we look at it, this is almost a representation of the stone itself, the composition.
Completely, the geological form inside of it.
Wow.
When you shatter a piece of marble, if I was to knock a corner off this,
everything...
No, I won't. Everything is a fractal inside of it.
Wow.
And it's, especially for this larger crystal, that's why it shines so much out of it. The crystalline structure inside, which I did a little bit of research into and looking at it and thought it was such a natural path without me even thinking about it at first, just creating these works and doing a bit of research into it. I thought it's a very organic way of bringing something out that's millions of years old.
It is incredible, isn't it? Marble is that material. As an artist, you're dealing with something that's being made over millions of years.
So you need to respect it as much as possible as well, because at some point there's not going to be any more of it as well.
Wow.
And, you know, a lot of these works will, I hope, outlive me and, you know, be passed on to many other people to enjoy. So it is a very, it can be quite an emotional thing to do. And I find you even get quite emotional at the end of doing it too. So you persevere and buckle your body and your mind. You have to walk around these works in your head, three-dimensionally. And then for some of these, I may have carved it a certain way and then gone, oh, I'll start on the bottom, turned it over, and then I've then realised it looks better that way. It now needs to be carved that way. So then I will indulge in that, and some I've carved down to nothing.
You have a weight of history, not only the history of the stone itself, but in the history of certainly Western art. Marble is a really important part of our culture, isn't it? And
it is. For building, for creating artworks, just how people have such a romance with it. It's a very even though it's a bit ironic saying it, it's a very heavy material in culture.
Right, yeah, okay. So when, as an audience, do you think about the audience when you're carving this, or is it a more personal experience?
I don't particularly, and I know it's a bit of a selfish thing to say, but I try and form a body of work that appeals to me and that I want to create. And this is one of the scarier parts as well, because you spend so much time indulging in doing these works and trying to figure them out, and then bringing your babies out, in a sense, to show the world and see what everyone else thinks. It's one of the most scariest things you can do. Because in the studio, you don't mind. You're just trying to get that shape, that line, make sure it looks finished. Every aspect of it has no scratches, and then you're so focused on that process. It's not till you then come to the gallery process where you start to freak out.
But there's many hours that take to create.
Long hours, and it's one of those. You look at it and you're like, oh, I'll get this done in 20 hours, and that time can double, and like that.
And this particular work is laid down on a granite.
That's right, Australian granite as well.
Yeah. And tell me, the juxtaposition, is it a colour or form?
It is a bit with both. I actually didn't first initially think I would put them on the granite. I've had this granite at the studio for a long time and loved it. And I just didn't know what to do with it. And granite is very hard to carve.
Right.
Very strong.
It's also very heavy.
Oh yes, that's right, as we know. So then, looking at these pieces, and like every good sculptor should do, you bring your blocks out, you sit them in front of you. That could be for a day, it could be for a week, it could be for a year, until it kind of tells you what it wants and how you work with it. So I started to sort of filter some of these out and test them on these blocks just to see if it worked, how that would affect my mind of how the show would sit. Black and white with these two sort of stones is such a nice colour because it's just such strong elements between the two. So I just kept testing it until I sort of went, I think I'm going to get these two to sit together. I didn't know how I would display them at first. And then the more I was thinking about it, this one over there, I was actually thinking of having upright and having this guy sort of really cantilever off the end of him. But in the end, that didn't make sense. And when you come into the space, especially with sculpture, it's not like hanging a painting. You can't just put it on the wall and enjoy it. You really need to understand how the space works, how people will interact with it.
It really is an interesting thing, isn't it? That sculpture is a living art form that
in itself
that sits in space, that you have to engage with it on all angles.
And that changes for the artist as well, carving from the studio to in gallery, where what you may have in your head or how you want to exhibit them to show them completely changes.
And then into the house.
And then to someone's house. I've seen people do weird and wonderful things with certain works that they buy, and you're like, oh, I didn't think I'd see it that way.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best parts as well, for especially some of these faceted works, because they're interchangeable.
It's also interesting as an art form that it's something that we were talking on the weekend about how they can be inside and outside with a little bit of treatment. And
that's right.
You made a great point. You said, well, it's been outside for quite a few millions of years, so it can go back there. So
it completely can, and it's more because the art form, once you carve something from it, and it's beautifully clean and polished and all of that, when it gets a little dirty outside, certain clients can tend to freak out and all the rest, but as long as you treat it, and there's beautiful sealers and ages and all kinds of things that we can add to them to help that. And like any outdoor artwork, it just needs maintenance. You take care of it, it'll be fine, especially with stone.
Yep. Well, Mitch, thanks so much for giving us a little bit more insight into your work. It's, as I say, it's been very exciting for us to show this work, and I know that everywhere we still have this issue of not necessarily being able to get in here to see the works, but hopefully this video will give you a little bit more information out there wherever you may be on the skill of this artist, and also just the incredible ethereal nature of his work. And we are extremely proud and excited about this exhibition.
Thank you.